It's the Monday CBS Sports Network edition of Pushing the Pile, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. I'm Mike Renner, he's Kyle Long, and as always, we are joined by none other than former MVP Matt Ryan every single Monday to break down quarterback play, and we wanted to get right into this heavyweight matchup. It felt like it a little bit on tape between maybe the two of the toolsiest quarterbacks in the NFL, and Caleb Williams and Anthony Richardson, but there were some knockout punches, but there were some swings and misses, too, in this one.
Big time.
What did you see from this duo going head-to-head in Indy?
Yeah, I mean, I think from both you saw the potential, right? Like the potential to make plays and the arm strength and just kind of the physical. Did you say the toolsiest of the toolsiest?
What
like
what was
that.
the beginning there?
That's what I...
Yeah, I got to use that. But to me, you saw some of like the potential. But I think with both you see the inconsistency, and that's what shows up when you watch both of these guys play. I do think from the Colts side with Anthony Richardson, I mean, his ability to run the football, there's no question about it, right? He can lower the boom. He had a good run, set them up for a score. He can throw it down the field, but, I mean, he's got to improve accuracy. You have to improve accuracy in the intermediate passing game if they're going to be more explosive and certainly more efficient as an offense. And with the way they're built, too, with guys like Michael Pittman Jr., right? Like these are guys that eat in that intermediate passing game. And so, I'd like to see a little bit more growth and consistency there. Chris Ballard, GM for them, talked about it. This was kind of going to be the ride they were going to go through this season with Anthony Richardson, a little bit of the roller coaster, the highs and the lows, and trying to get a little bit more consistent every week. And I think they're still searching for that. And then with Caleb Williams, I think there were positives to draw from this game. I honestly do. I think interception in the flat late is something he's going to learn you just can't do, right? You can't throw to the sideline blind late and not think somebody's going to be driving on that football. And that really was costly for them. The offensive line play, Kyle, you can speak to it better than I can, but the offensive line play for the Bears has not been good enough through 3 weeks, right? And that puts you in a position as a young quarterback to be in some tough spots. They have to protect better. I also think they've got to try and establish the run more. Like to ask him to throw the ball over 50 times a game, it's just that's what it's going to look like for young players, right? Like, even when you're in year 13, 14, 15, there might be 2 or 3 games a year where you've got to do that, right? And you've got to try and put the team on your shoulders. So I think in a lot of ways they're asking him to do a little bit too much too early. But again, I think there's enough signs of him when it does click, it looks like it's supposed to look. And I think he just needs to continue to improve his consistency.
Matt, I think you make a great point about having to establish the run. And obviously there's some things that needs fixing up there on the Bears offensive line. And this space shuttle, this rocket already left Houston. It's in the upper atmosphere now. Nobody's coming onto this spaceship to save us. Nobody's coming off the spaceship. This is what we got. How are we going to do it? You go against a team 31st in total defense against the Colts, 32nd in the National Football League in the run game. What are we going to do, Matt? We're going to pound the rock, and we're going to give you opportunities to maybe find some of your favorite targets down the field. But 50-plus throws later and a really piss-poor running game later, and you get a loss on the road against the Colts, and everybody's got their hands in the air, palms up. But I think it starts with the offensive line. And to your point, when you got both your tackles getting bull rushed, one into your back, one into your lap, this as a quarterback, where the problems are on your offensive line. Where you're going to start to fade a little bit as a passer. That the pocket's going to move. It's just a natural tendency. You've seen it time and time again. When you've got both sides of the hallway closing in on you, it's no good. Can you talk to me about that thought process when, obviously they can't all be all-stars up front, Matt. So for Caleb Williams, what is that doing to his timing?
Yeah, no. I mean, you said it, right? It's the old, I think Rick Pitino said it, like, Larry Bird's not walking through that door. Robert Parrish isn't walking through that door. You're not getting all pros. Olin Kreutz isn't coming back in, And so you've got to understand who you have up front. And I think that's easier to do as you become more of a veteran player where your mind is not on what coverage am I seeing? What is my progression in the route combination? It's more on, okay, I know I'm getting cover 2 here. I know we got this concept. all right, we've got an issue here on the left side. I might need to just wiggle a little bit to my right and then climb up into the pocket. I think that's something that will come with experience. But to me, the concerning thing, well, it's really two things. Number one, in the run game, it's an unwillingness to run the football, or it's the inability to run the football. And either one of those, whatever the case may be, to me, that part is a little bit concerning for the Chicago Bears. The other thing is, you mentioned it, the one-on-one blocks for the tackles, et cetera. Those are hard. Those are difficult. The thing I have seen with them early is an inability to handle games, right? Meaning, we're going to stunt two defensive linemen this way and then wrap a defensive end all the way around. And Kyle, you know better than anybody, that comes down to the offensive lineman being on the same page. It comes down to proper mechanics in terms of how you set, how you communicate, kind of passing things off. And to me, that's one of the things that I don't think is on Caleb, right? I think that is on the guys up front, that they need to sort that out and do a better job.
Yeah, it's the biggest group on the field in terms of numbers. There's 5 linemen out there. Not only that, they're the biggest guys on the field. You're going to have the biggest impact on the football game outside of the quarterback. And also, you're a key determining factor in how he does. Passing off games, to your point, it's 5 guys, 10 eyeballs seeing through one set of eyes. And when you don't have the continuity, you don't have the confidence, everybody's worried about their assignment. You get tunnel vision. You're like, here's my 3 technique. I got to block my 3 technique. Next thing you know is he goes that way. Somebody else is coming. Don't get lost on the 3 technique. Get ready to help your buddy off. Snap him off. Get your eyes up and get ready to keep it in front of you. They haven't done that with any success this year. It's a good point, Matt.
I will say this about the Bears, though.
Yeah.
So they don't win the game. But I think they have to be a little bit more encouraged by what they saw from their quarterback than the flip side of the ball.
100%.
Because with Caleb, we talked about, they need to improve the running game. That's obvious. But he just did the hardest thing you have to do as a quarterback, which is pass when everyone knows you're going to pass. Kind of that come from behind. Everyone knows it's going to happen. And he didn't put the ball in harm's way. Whereas on the flip side of the coin, with Anthony Richardson, yeah, we know he's always going to be a monster in the running game. Yeah, we know that with Jonathan Taylor and that offensive line, they can still be a good offense. But all they need is just a few throws, man. Like, just hit a couple of these, and that offense is going to be explosive, but he still can't. So, Matt, is there a way for quarterbacks to fix accuracy? I think it's one of those traits that, from like a scouting perspective, we've often thought of it as almost immutable. You got it, you don't. But we've seen quarterbacks recently improve to some regard in their accuracy. Is this something we could see Anthony Richardson improve upon, even if he hasn't to this point?
Well, yes, because, I think I improved my accuracy as, I think of it from like an individual standpoint. I think I got better as my career went on, right? And the focus was on, my mechanics. And it really started from the ground up. It was getting my feet in position to allow myself to deliver the football accurately and efficiently and not having to overcome things, right? Not having to kind of throw across your hips. Or be closed off to a target to my left, right? Is like, let's get everything in line, right, to give us the best chance to deliver the ball accurately. And I think that's something that, he's going to continue to have to work on. But you got to make your layups, right? Like you have to make the open ones. You have to hit the easy stuff. And to me, like, that's where it has to start, right? It is just being willing to work on the very, very basic things and making sure that you're accomplishing those things and being comfortable making those kind of plays, right? Making the boring sexy. That's what I say. Good quarterback play over time is making the boring sexy, doing the little things right over and over and over again. And then you kind of look up at the end of the game or the end of the season and you compiled all of these statistics and wins and you made the right plays kind of down in and down out. And I do think he can, grow in that space. And like with his skill set, I think he's so dynamic as a runner and as a deep ball thrower. Like, he didn't have to be the best in the league in that space. He's got to be competent in that space. And if he can kind of close that gap and become competent in that space, he can be a really dynamic player.
It's like a guy who's really long off the tee box or on a par 5, a guy that can go maybe 3-wood putter. Anthony Richardson has that ability to go deep, get the ball where he wants to go, but when it comes down to hitting that 5-footer, and we know this about pro golfers, 5-footers are gimmies. 4-footers are gimmies. It needs to become, maybe we need 3-footers to become gimmies for Anthony Richardson. Then we'll start to see this thing moving in the right direction. But he has so much upside on that 3-wood, on that driver. People are like, whoa, did you see that throw? Did you see that run that he made? Well, we got to make those putts. The gimmies, they got to happen for Anthony Richardson.
It's also why.
The last thing on him. The last thing on him is we got to hit less foul balls. If we're in base, we got to hit less foul balls. Just get the ball in play, right? Like let's keep the ball in between the white lines and go play. And I think if he does that, this Colts team, they could be in the mix, right? Like they've been poor against the run in the first 2 weeks. They were better yesterday, right? So if he can be efficient in that space, I think they could be better off.
That's the thing. It's like everything else is so good, and like the upside of what he could be is so great that
many oohs and ahs.
They're not going to be able to give up on him.
Yeah.
He might be this guy the rest of his career, and I just struggle to see them giving up on him, at least like through this year, next year, whatnot. And they'd probably be silly to, because if he hits, that's how you get a Josh Allen, right? That's how you get those top of the league sort of guys. Let's move on to someone who has fixed their accuracy to some degree, who's playing the quarterback position better than they ever have before, and it's Sam Darnold, your current touchdown leader with 8 touchdown passes to the Minnesota Vikings. They're 3-0. What have you seen from him in his career resurgence here in the purple?
Well, it looks decisive. I think the more I watch him on Sundays and then go back through the week, he looks like he's in the space where he can be decisive. He's making confident decisions and throwing the ball really accurately. And I think that's probably the biggest thing, right? Like, even him coming out, it was never a question of his ability to throw the football or his accuracy. A lot of it came down to decision making, and he had those like comments about seeing ghosts and all that kind of different stuff, and he's kind of grinded through that. I give him a lot of credit for it. So I think he's in a spot where he's seeing it well. He's making good decisions, and I think a lot of that comes to coaching too, right? Like I do think. His time in San Francisco and kind of maybe hearing it from a different perspective from a Kyle Shanahan and learning in a year and listening to Brock Purdy, who's a very good decision maker, and seeing how he prepares. He's talked about that, right? Watching a younger player, how efficient he was with his preparation. I think all of those things matter. And then you get to Minnesota, and I think Kevin O'Connell is very much that same way. He's an excellent teacher, very good designer of plays, puts guys in different spots to open them up, to allow Sam to have a clean picture to look at. And to me, I think that's what you're seeing. You're seeing a guy who's making better decisions, who's confident, who has a little bit of belief, a little bit of confidence, and they've had the ball bounce their way a little bit too, right? Like you need that. You need that when you're trying to, come back from not playing well your first 4 or 5 years, and you're trying to get that confidence back. He has that backwards pass yesterday where he gets hit. Brandon Powell scoots it up, gets like 8 yards or whatever it was, and keeps them on schedule. Like little things like that can make a massive difference going one way or the other. And I think you've seen a bit of the ball bouncing their way in the first couple of weeks and him making good decisions.
I think complementary football is so important too, and these are all great points you bring up, Matt. And I think about in 2018 when we had Mitch Trubisky at quarterback for the Bears. It's not like Mitch Trubisky was the greatest quarterback to ever walk the earth, but when you look at a team with a really good defense, with a really good coordinator that will keep you bend but not break, will keep you in games, provide turnovers in timely situations. We had a good offensive line, a better than average offensive line. So same type of luxury that Sam's enjoying in Minnesota. He's got time to throw and time to make decisions. It's not like some of the other quarterbacks we've talked about who are under duress all the time. I mean, it's a great combination. It's a perfect storm for Sam Darnold. He's been so impressive. We just hope we can keep it up. It's been so much fun to watch.
Yeah, I think the word you said, decisive, is the perfect word. Like he's not blinking. He drops back, he hits his back foot. If it's a deep ball, he's throwing the deep ball that's there. If it's intermediate, he's throwing it. He's not hesitating on any of this stuff. And yeah, he's thrown like one a game that could have gone back the other way, that could be picked off. He still has that to him, but
I feel like that's every quarterback.
But
sometimes they get
100%.
lucky. And sometimes they get lucky.
You need it to go your way a little bit. I like what you said about complementary football, Kyle, to me is so important too. Their first 2 possessions, first possession of the game offensively, they had the ball like inside the 20 or wherever it was after the interception. Second possession of the game for them offensively, Texans missed the field goal. ball's at their own 44, right? Like you're starting the game off on short field opportunities and they're making people pay for that. Like that goes a long way too, and making you feel more comfortable as the game is going on.
Cuddly feeling for a team.
In those spots.
It's a warm and cuddly feeling when you're all making plays
doubt.
and you're
high-fiving. You get out there and you see short field. It's like, God, one completion and we're in the end zone.
Yep.
So even with 4 touchdown passes, though, Sam Darnold did not do enough to get Matt Ryan's coveted quarterback of the week. Who did, you ask? Stay tuned. Find out after this. The Panthers, as it turns out, just an Andy Dalton away from being a house.
Jeez.
Blow out the Las Vegas Raiders as underdogs. Andy Dalton in this one, well over 300 yards, 3 touchdown passes. The first quarterback of the season to put up that stat line this year, 300-plus yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and the award winner of Matt Ryan's coveted quarterback of the week. What do we see here, Matt?
I mean, he played really well. And he was making, tight window throws. The seam that he hit Thielen on, I mean, that was an absolute strike, and really attacking the middle of the field. I mean, I thought he was really effective between the numbers. I had the stat yesterday. I should have had the stat prepared for you, but his completion percentage was up north of 75%, and he had over 165, 70 yards of passing just between the numbers. And I think that's an area of the field that he can help kind of attack in that space. And I think that comes with experience. We haven't seen him as a full-time starter in a handful of years, but I mean, this guy, he played really, really good football in Cincinnati for a long time. And he knows how to go out there and play. I thought he provided an energy and a spark for the team too. I thought they looked different. I thought they looked different on the defensive side of the ball, flying around, making plays. And so the numbers, like you said, over 300 yards, three touchdown passes, the first guy to do it this season, which is kind of an indictment on the passing in the first 3 weeks of the season. But, for him to do that is one thing, but for him to make the impact on the energy of that team, which I thought was noticeable when you watched the game yesterday, to me, it was an impressive performance. Now we got to see if they can stack that, right, and get back into the mix. What's crazy to me, guys, is the Panthers have the same record as the Niners, the Cowboys, and the Ravens. Who would have said that to start the year? And that's where we're at through 3 weeks of the season.
Yeah, they can turn things around. They truly can, especially with the NFC South being as open as it is. But the interesting thing to me here, and this comes after, and it is 1 week, whatnot, but it comes after what Joe Flacco did last year down the stretch, leading the Browns to the playoffs, winning comeback player of the year. Veterans, seemingly league-wide, the guys who have been at this 8+ years, seem like the ones who know how to handle these two-shell defenses. Is there something to that? Do they
fear an old man at war, for it's a young man's sport? And when I get on an airplane, Matt, which I do a lot, sometimes you see these young hotshot pilots that just came out of the video. They were just playing the flight simulator when they were 16, and now they got a job. I want the old guy who's 70 that was flying in Vietnam, who's got a funny monologue at the beginning of the flight that gets everybody calm and relaxed, and you can see everybody has a better time, more enjoyment on the flight. When you got a young guy like Bryce Young and there's ghosts and their head's spinning, I'm kind of sweaty palms in first class up there as a passenger, but the rest of the team, you see him
first class
really
guy. You heard it, Mike. He's
first class or exit row, whichever one is available for me. But yeah, to your point, everybody on the roster feels like they have a chance. They take the Nerf bullets out of their magazine and they throw the live rounds in there. And you got Andy Dalton. Next thing you know, they're making plays on offense. They're scoring points. The defense is rallying. That's when complimentary football happens. It's all about belief, Matt.
Yeah. You want, what was the guy's name? Sully Sullinger?
Sully.
Who landed Sully. He landed that thing on the Hudson. That's what Kyle's looking for, right? He wants the guy who can land the plane when the comms are out. And so to me, that's what you have, though, in veteran quarterbacks. You talk about, the wealth of experience that Andy Dalton has, having seen so many different coverages, seen so many different blitzes. He's been hit so many times, right? And has made so many plays. He's got this database in his head of experience of knowing what to do. And I think the one thing you get with experience is you don't panic, right? Like you have this kind of demeanor that, no matter what happens, I'm going to grind through it. I'm going to get to the next play. I'm going to try and make good decisions over and over and over. And I think that's what you saw from Andy Dalton yesterday.
Speaking of a guy who finally looks like he has a database in his head to draw from, Justin Fields, 3-0 as a starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers. For my money, what he did this past weekend showed real growth from him in how he attacked this Chargers defense. And I know they haven't scored a ton of points, only 3 touchdowns through 3 games. But he's playing efficient football. He's not turning it over, not putting the ball in harm's way, and truly looks like he's taken a leap forward in his development as a quarterback. What have you seen from him, and do you think he's the starter once Russell Wilson's back healthy?
I think yesterday, solidified that. I think he played okay in the first 2 games, right? He did what he needed to do in order for their teams to win the game. And I think yesterday, particularly in the second half, I mean, he made some throws in the passing game over the middle of the field, particularly the touchdown pass, right? In that tight window in the middle of the field, and they kind of split it right out the back end. I thought it was really impressive. I think, even listening to him talk after the game, there's a growth to maturity. I think having gone through the experiences that he went through in Chicago, right? It hardens you. Sometimes the most important thing you can do as an athlete is struggle, right? Whether it's at the college level and you have to struggle to get on the field or work through it, or you have some ups and downs, right? And you come out on the other side of it and you're better off. Sometimes it happens in the NFL. And we've seen, guys like Sam Darnold, who we talked about earlier. But I think you're seeing it from Justin Fields in that, he's a little bit harder. He's a little bit more mentally tough, at least it appears to me from an outside perspective. And he's not letting the noise get to him. And then I also think, we go back to that complementary football, knowing that you have, that defense on the other side of the ball, knowing that you've got, a pass rush and a defense that can get home, right, and create problems and stop the run. It makes your life so much easier on the other side of the football. And I think Justin knows exactly what he has in that football team. And I think Arthur Smith, their offensive coordinator coming over from Atlanta last year, has done an excellent job with him.
Yeah, putting him in positions to do the things that he enjoys doing and does with great success. But to your point, the throws over the middle of the field, that's what you and Mike have been talking about. That was the vacuum in Chicago. There were no throws over the middle of the field. And it led guys like me, who are pig-headed and not quite as smart as you two, to say, this guy doesn't know how to play quarterback. He's a thrower and an athlete. Well, Mike Tomlin, Art Smith, these guys have figured out a way to get this guy on the same page with his receivers, be able to see the ball, to be able to see the voids in the defense in the middle of the field. It's been great growth, and he's one of those guys that we wrote off, and he never wrote back, Matt. So I'm happy for Justin Fields. I'm happy as a Bears fan that we got Caleb Williams, but at the end of the day, Justin Fields having success in Pittsburgh, it's almost like a match made in heaven.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see, too, the more success he has, throwing over the middle of the field comes down to trust, right? Timing, anticipation, and trust. Trust that guys are going to be in the right spots. And the more you have success, the more you fit a few of them in, the more confidence you have to let it rip over the middle of the field.
So Justin Fields, year 4, last question I got for you here. It took Geno Smith until, year 7 until he really locked down that starting job for the Seattle Seahawks. When did you feel like you reached kind of your peak of power in the NFL? When was it you felt like, I've seen it all at this point, I'm just kind of operating off of this, to use the word we mentioned earlier, database, and you're just humming throughout the NFL?
I felt like year 5, to be honest with you, was kind of the start, and then there was kind of a stretch that went after that. But, really year 1, swimming, and I was lucky. We had a good run game, a solid defense. I had good skill position players. I had a lot of pieces around me. Year 2, I thought I knew a little bit of what I were doing, maybe feeling myself a little bit, and then realized I didn't know, and then year 3, I started to get a little bit more comfortable. And then 3 and 4, I felt like I played well, but I feel like year 5, I hit a different level. And for the first time in my career, felt like I understood what I was looking at and how to attack certain coverages, understanding how to help my guys out up front, getting us into the right protections, getting us out of the wrong plays. Like, I really felt like that was when I started to play my best football, was in year 5.
Good stuff, as always, Matty. We'll have you back next Monday to break down quarterbacks. And after this, we got Jonathan Jones coming on the show to break down some storylines throughout the NFL. After this.
Thanks, Matt.
Trouble brewing in paradise.
Start over.
Trouble brewing in Vegas, possibly. Antonio Pierce had some choice words after the show. We were just vibing pre-show, and that's why I was a little out to lunch there. He had this to say. As the game went on, there were some individuals that made business decisions, so we'll make business decisions going forward as well. JJ, what did you think of those comments? What's going on here in Las Vegas after this ugly loss?
That was some interesting talk from Antonio Pierce. I actually texted around after that. I was like, who's he talking about? And actually, nobody seemed to know. And so I'm excited to learn at the 4 p.m. Eastern time if the Raiders have cut bait with someone, or if he was just kind of putting guys on notice, which I think is really what it more so was. Obviously, Antonio Pierce, a former player. G'd up from the feet up. He's going to say things like this, right? And he's going to let people know exactly how he's feeling. I was obviously surprised at the outcome of that game. Not necessarily that the Carolina Panthers won. They still have talent on their team. They're still an NFL football team. But how they won and how they just so thoroughly beat the Raiders. So I would imagine Antonio Pierce, being a former player, having so many former head coaches on his staff like Marvin Lewis, Joe Philbin, he regularly still talks to his old coach Tom Coughlin. You don't get that many padded practices in the NFL regular season anymore. I can almost guarantee that the Raiders will have a padded practice this week.
Yeah, big time padded practice. JJ, me and Mike were talking about this. I initially thought it was Devontae Adams because I saw him sitting on the bench when everybody else sprinted into the locker room. And as you and I know, Mike pointed out, it's 15 minutes in the NFL for halftime. So sprint in there, get your adjustments on the whiteboard, get back out, try to win a ball game against a team that you should beat. But Mike pointed out some stuff he saw on film that might be able to fill you in on your answer there, JJ.
I went searching. I was like, Antonio Pierce, he's probably talking about the defensive side of the ball, or, maybe wide receiver not going over the middle of the field. What I saw, Jack Jones, the obviously much maligned corner, New England Patriots, he was cut there a couple of years ago, or last year. 2 times defensively, fourth quarter. One, he didn't even try to tackle Chuba Hubbard in the open field, bounced into the outside, literally just backed away on a play where he was the primary guy enforced tackling him. The other one, he attempted to tackle him, but basically just let Chuba Hubbard put a stiff arm right into his chest, didn't leave his feet, didn't go try to gather him after that. So I'm thinking it was probably Jack Jones.
Yeah, and you know what? This is Antonio Pierce. This isn't any head coach. This is a guy that was the smartest, toughest guy on the football team that he played on whenever he played on football teams. He doesn't miss much, and if you're a guy like Jack Jones, you better put your nose in there because your head coach will be watching, and yes, he will be judging too.
On Sunday, JJ, you reported, short of Dalton going on a tear, there's a belief within the organization that Young will be called upon again this season in what would be one of the earliest second acts of a number 1 overall pick's career. Is one game from Andy Dalton enough of a tear to think that we may not see Bryce Young in a Panthers uniform ever again?
It's not a tear, okay? So I remember back when I used to cover this team and I worked at the Charlotte Observer, there was an editor there who made it very clear, like, hey, you can't say losing streak if they've only lost 2 games. You can't say winning streak if they've only won 2 games. That's not a streak. And so a 1-game performance can never be constituted as a tear, all right? But if Andy Dalton keeps looking like Andy Dalton did Sunday out in Vegas, we're going to get into tear territory, if you will. I like to call it territory. You get it?
Yes.
And so, yes, that could happen. I think, generally speaking, what folks in and around that organization thought was Andy Dalton's going to come in like the old grizzled veteran that he is. He's going to play some good. He's going to play some bad. And maybe there's going to be an opportunity for Bryce to eventually start again. Certainly, let's be clear about this, right? Bryce is still active. He's still QB2 in any world, he is one play away from going back and being the Carolina Panthers quarterback. And so, yeah, Andy Dalton continues to play like we saw. Bryce is not going to see the field for the Carolina Panthers this season. But if he comes back down to earth a little bit, and no one wants any sort of injury, but if something like that were to happen, we could see Bryce. Now, it does not behoove the Panthers whatsoever right now to make any move with Bryce Young. I know there was a report out there that they got calls for some trade interest. This happens all the time in the NFL, right? Hey, Vikings, are you interested in trading Justin Jefferson? No? Okay. I assume that constitutes trade interest. And so teams did call, hey, you benched this guy. We liked him in the pre-draft process. Would you take a couple nickels for him? And like actual nickels, not a nickel corner, but, a coin. And so that is what we're dealing with right now with Bryce. The Panthers don't have to move him, and so they won't move him. But when we get into late October, and I think the trade deadline happens to fall on Election Tuesday, could Bryce be moved? Absolutely, but we still have a whole month of play to figure that out.
Do you think there would be interest around the NFL, and are there any teams that come to your mind that would want Bryce Young as a quarterback?
Well, first of all, the Panthers would have to get a legitimate price for him. So go back to Trey Lance getting dealt to the Dallas Cowboys, and the Cowboys sent a fourth-round pick for him. Of course, that was higher than anybody else was going to go. I don't see anybody trading a fourth for Bryce right now. I do believe that the Miami Dolphins anticipate that Tua is ultimately going to be back. Tennessee Titans, are you getting out of trouble with Will Levis to get back into a different sort of trouble with Bryce Young? I don't see anyone needing to do it right now. And if they do it, they're not going to give Carolina what they would want in return if Carolina wants to trade him. So it's just not going to happen right now.
Understood. Yeah, I don't foresee it happening, especially since contracts guaranteed through the first 4 years. The cap hit they would have to take to trade him. Someone would have to take out some money, too.
They gave up so much to get to in the position they're in. The last thing they want to do is lose out on everything again.
All right, moving on to head coaching candidates here as Brian Flores continues his domination of the rest of the NFL. This Vikings defense on a warpath. This time, C.J. Stroud, the victim, holding them to 7 points this past week. Jeez. They have 5+ sacks in each of the first 3 games. Is he the top head coaching candidate on the market this upcoming coaching season, or will his past handling of Tua Tagovailoa and the lawsuit against the NFL play a factor in those who want him as their head coach?
This is a great question. I would say he's not the top coaching candidate because the top coaching candidate would be his former boss, Bill Belichick, who I strongly and truly believe will be a head coach in 2025. Mike Vrabel could also be back on the sidelines somewhere. But Brian Flores is going to be the beneficiary of a trend in the NFL where we saw this last cycle a couple defensive-minded coaches get head coaching opportunities after that rash of offensive-minded coaches got so many opportunities and to varying degrees of success over the years. He also is going to be the beneficiary of retread coaches, right? Guys who did it once and, all right, hey, maybe we don't need the hot shot offensive coordinator. Maybe there aren't that many that exist. One that does exist is Bobby Slowick, who he just put in shambles yesterday against the Houston Texans. And so when you look at Flores, I talked with 10 people around the league, folks who know him well, folks who have game planned against him, folks who are game planning against him at some point. And they all told me his defense is so unique, which is what we have always known, that he does the unpredictable. Someone said that it sometimes doesn't make football logical sense what he's doing, but that doesn't mean that his scheme is unsound. It's just so unorthodox. He does what so many are not willing to do. The Tua stuff is going to be difficult for him, and he's going to have to show that he has a plan, first of all, for the quarterback position, that he has a plan for his coaching staff because he cycled through so many coaches. He's going to have to show that he has learned some things over the past couple of years. Whether you believe Tua at his absolute word or you believe that Brian Flores maybe wasn't as hard on Tua as, and Ryan Fitzpatrick kind of alluded to that a little bit last month. The point is that clearly he needs some things to clean up. And then lastly, the lawsuit. A lot of teams don't want to hire someone who is actively suing them. So, that's kind of caught up in arbitration right now. I know it seems like a very obvious thing, but it is nice that The league has invited him to the accelerator program for up-and-coming coaches and coaches who are hoping to get another opportunity. That the Steelers took a chance on him 2 years ago, that the Minnesota Vikings have brought him in. So he's not, a black sheep in the league necessarily. He has not been blackballed by the league, but will he get an opportunity? It's going to be hard to look past him if this defense keeps playing the way that it is.
Yeah, he'd be number one on my coach. No offense to Bill Belichick. He's a legend. But what he's doing right now, to me, is truly innovative. Like, there's rare to see innovation at the NFL level before it comes from like collegiate football and whatnot.
I'm still getting the best OC, and then I'm hiring whoever spends the most time with Brian Flores in Minnesota. That's who I'm hiring, whether it's an LB coach, a secondary coach.
Just get Harrison Smith to retire and be your DC.
Harry, the Hitman, you are now the Bears defensive coordinator.
All right, JJ, before we let you out of here, we know you do the Sunday morning show with this man over here, and you had some choice words to tell him about what the Bears did this upcoming week. Weekend.
You have some thoughts on some play calling, I assume, JJ? What you got?
Well, I don't want to necessarily second guess anyone, but that 4th and goal situation, that out of shotgun toss, and what the offensive linemen were doing, where in that screenshot it appears that they're all having a nice lounge, as folks in Chicago like to do on concrete there by the water.
It's a beach.
That's what I thought of.
It's a beach.
Put a towel on.
It's a beach. Yeah, it's a beach. Kyle, what was going on that play?
So I'll start with giving a little lesson on some 3-step cut protections. 300 jet cut is what you hear sometimes. That's where immediately we are going to cut the guys in front of us, get the hands down, particularly of the edges. The tackle position gets the hands down of the edge rushers, and it's a quick window throw out to the flat. That's 300 jet. Now what you were looking at was an option to the left. And what do we want to do? Get these guys on the ground because the play's going to be outside. We're trying to get to the outside immediately. But there's too many guys outside. If there's one guy outside, you put him in a bind because he has to pick between the two. Basic math tells me TMF. Too many you-know-whats over there. And they ran the play. They didn't have a check. Nobody called timeout. Next thing you know, Caleb Williams running laterally, throws it backwards. Now it's a loss of 6 on a 4th and 1. I say get under center, either pound that thing, use a fullback, get in the A gaps, B gaps, and if you don't, if the numbers dictate that he should keep it, make a check at the line of scrimmage, fake the handoff, and let your guy Caleb Williams go make a play. I hate it. You don't put the game in the hands of your offensive linemen, although they didn't do a good job in open field anyway, blocking in the run. But keep the game in your offensive line's hands. It's the best way to have the defense play on their heels. But now you're trying to outflank a defense, out-cute a defense. No, I don't like it one bit. I don't like the gun runs. I especially don't like the gun speed option on 4th and 1.
I think Hard Knocks fooled a lot of people. A lot of the best situation ever.
That's how they do it.
RIP best situation ever. Lasted.
And congratulations to Hard Knocks for doing a great job.
To week 2. There you have it. Thanks so much, JJ, for joining us.
Thanks, JJ.
As always, we'll be back to play a little overreaction versus reality 3 weeks into this NFL season. We're 3 weeks in. Now, some week 1 overreactions look pretty silly in retrospect, but some week 1 realities, like this Vikings defense, look like they've come to fruition. So we're going to play overreaction versus reality. And the first one is the Minnesota Vikings. After starting 3-0, after dethroning the 49ers in week 2, after housing the Texans this past week, are they now the team to beat?
How could you not say that this is reality from what we've seen? Yes, I love watching the Packers and what they're doing. Malik Willis, Matt LaFleur's a genius. We've talked about him. But this is the Purple People Eaters. This is Kevin O'Connell's roster, which looks awesome. Tackle to tackle, good O-line. You got skill guys. You've got a defensive unit that's coached by one of the best masterminds in football. I love this group. They've provided a renaissance year for Sam Darnold, who has been written off and shipped off of so many coasts. This poor guy has been to football hell and back. He survived. Now he gets a football team. They're going to be tough for anybody to beat, whether it's on the road or at home, because defense travels, offensive line tends to travel and play very well even on the road. I love the Vikings, man. They're a lot of fun. I think the group that is going to give them the most trouble is the Green Bay Packers. I really like the things that Matt LaFleur dials up offensively. And for the Lions, the question is, who are you going to be? Which version of the Lions team shows up? Are you able to maintain leads when you have it? I just don't know. But the Vikings, man, they're a complete package right now. A lot of fun to watch.
I'm going to cheat because, as you see there, the odds are really tight. I'm just going to say there's no team to beat. Those three, I think, are on equal footing at this point. That's not to say, the Vikings haven't been a massive surprise and that they're not a great football team.
I'm a big recency guy.
All those three
I
are
like the
great.
recency guy. The Lions have proven us they're a good team. Packers are coming along. But this Vikings team, they're fresh. They're the fresh cookies at the front of the display case. It's a reality for me.
And I think we'll find out this upcoming weekend because not only do we get to see them play a division foe, but we get to see Sam Darnold on the road.
Yep.
I think that's a big one. Going on the road against a division rival in a hostile environment in Green Bay. This ain't
MetLife.
This ain't the Giants booing their quarterback halfway through the first half. This is Jordan Love coming back this week and the Green Bay Packers with their defense playing at a really high level the past couple weeks. So they beat them? Yeah. It's reality. But as of right now, there just is no team to beat. Those three are all darn good football teams.
So I'm making a bit of a Lambeau leap here, putting the Minnesota Vikings at the top of the NFC North?
I think a little bit. And I'll just say I think all three make the playoffs when it's all said and done. All right, overreaction versus reality. Mike McCarthy won't last the full season as the Dallas Cowboys head coach.
I want to say reality, but he has lasted thus far, and they haven't done the things that this group should have done in terms of roster. The success they have offensively, historically, you should see this team late, deep into the playoffs every year, but they're not. Now they're just getting throttled. They're getting beat by teams they shouldn't be getting beat by. The defense isn't showing up. There's infighting on the sideline between their biggest stars, and in my opinion, it starts at the top. That's Mike McCarthy. You have to nip this stuff in the bud. Yeah, Mike Zimmer is in fault for a lot of their stuff on defense. I understand that. But as the head coach, you're responsible for everybody. You're responsible for all the stars on your team, keeping these guys happy. And you know what? The sword's got to fall on somebody, and it more often than not, tends to be the head coaches.
He will last the full season, so I think that's an overreaction to say he won't.
Well, he
will not last
I read the
until
question wrong.
The Super Bowl.
I read the question wrong. When these guys are eliminated and the season's done, they do their exit meetings. That may be the last exit meeting he does in Dallas.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. So if it's saying through to
they
the
won't
Super Bowl,
fire him during the regular season.
I'd be surprised if, one, they make the playoffs. If, two, he's still the head coach. If they don't make the playoffs, I think that's pretty obvious. And three, if Bill Belichick's not their head coach.
Oh, buddy.
Year. If you're Jerry Jones, just from a pure name branding perspective,
higher.
I think it's a match.
You want to
made
shut
in
people up in Dallas? Give them Bill Belichick.
I think that's a match made in heaven. All right. Overreaction or versus reality. The Titans should have held on to Malik Willis.
That's an overreaction, okay? You're not going to be able to do what the Green Bay Packers have done with Malik Willis in Tennessee. You're just not going to be able to do that. You've got turnover at the head coaching position. You don't have continuity. And you've got a quarterback. And with Malik Willis, we've seen the game plan tailored to his strengths, right, Mike? I mean, they're not asking him to go out there and be Tom Brady.
That's what you should hope. You should game plan, though, too.
But I mean,
I know what you mean, though.
But at the end of the day, you can't have this. You can't have the expectation that he was going to butt into a winning quarterback in Tennessee. He was not that. He was given opportunities, and it didn't look good. So it was clear that another lens had to be put on this guy, another set of shades, and that's the green and yellow shades.
I don't think it's an overreaction, though. I think it's reality. If a guy's capable of doing what he did the past 2 weeks, you should not deal him for a 7th-round pick on a rookie deal who's still improving.
What did he show you in Tennessee?
Well, that's the thing. I'm not saying he would have unseated Will Levis. I'm saying if Will Levis goes down, that's a competent backup.
To have him on the show.
To just get rid of him for, again, a 7th-round pick, which is just saying we don't want you.
Yep.
That's not an overreaction to say that they should not have done that. Now, it's not saying they should have started him, that they should have played him over Will Levis, that he's going to be better than Will Levis ultimately.
Hindsight's 20/20,
We know nothing about that.
We thought the guy couldn't play football. We thought he couldn't play football, quarterback at the NFL level. So you ship him out, and now he wins some games.
That's why we're literally doing hindsight here.
I know. This is tough. It's tough for me to say that anybody saw this coming from Malik Willis.
No, I agree with that wholeheartedly. But also, I think it's easy to say in hindsight, they shouldn't have dealt him.
You're right, in hindsight.
All right. Those are our overreactions versus reality. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to do our favorite moments from the weekend. Thanks for joining us. Pushing the Pile, Monday through Thursday, 9:30 a.m. Eastern, wherever you get your podcasts. And also check us out every Monday, usually 1 p.m. Eastern, and every Thursday, usually 1 p.m. Eastern, on CBS Sports Network. Until next time.
Power rankings tomorrow. Don't miss it.
Keep pushing.